there was a quote I heard from Father Joseph White. I think that's his name. He's a Dominican.
Thomas Joseph White.
Uh, Thomas Joseph White.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, about how people who struggle with scrupulosity fear the fires of hell. Like they're deathly afraid of that. But what they need to do is they need to recognize that it is the fire of God's love that empowers them. I'm that's not his exact language. That's something that I took
Yeah.
from it,
Well,
which is like, so when you go to receive
which fire
the
do you want to
Eucharist,
focus on?
right? Yeah, it's like recognize what you need,
Yeah.
And put yourself in the position to receive it. And of course, that's not to say that he encouraged people to not do a proper examen prior to receiving the Eucharist, right? Like you need to know or at least as best as you're able,
Yeah.
Um,
So,
but again, regardless, scrupulosity is definitely something that plays a role in the confession of sin.
yeah.
And so as a priest, what's your take?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is that there's a way in which we ought to be scrupulous. In the best, most positive, life-giving sense. To be scrupulous.
And if you suffer from scrupulosity, don't take that the wrong way.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, we're gonna get to that point in a second. But in this case, what I'm saying is, like, to be scrupulous means I'm very careful and I'm attentive. So I'm attentive to the detail, to say, have I done something that needs to be brought to the Lord for his mercy? Am I attentive to the way that I am behaving right now, to the disposition of my heart? It's like the appropriate sort of being scrupulous, which is I'm caring about the details because I understand that even the little things matter. Now, maybe the word scrupulous is improperly applied there. Maybe we can talk about.
I mean, I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah, but if we're doing it in that way, then we're on the right track. Then there's this other form that scrupulosity can take, that isn't just I'm attentive to the details and I'm paying attention and I'm careful. It becomes something that's actually sort of crippling. I'm trying to be a certain way or to do a certain thing. And because I'm trying to be a certain way or do a certain thing, I'm kind of on the wrong track. I'm trying to be a certain way. And now I'm afraid that I'm not measuring up. And so maybe I've created an image in my head of what I'm supposed to be. And because I've created this, and then I'm comparing myself to this image in my head of what I'm supposed to be, and maybe I'm not measuring up to it, I become really fastidious about trying to measure up to this, and then everything seems to be a failure, right? Scrupulosity can take the form of, like, in the spiritually detrimental sense. Like I might struggle with scrupulosity in such a way that I'm always worried that there's some sin that I've not confessed, and therefore I'm offending God again, right? It can be something that simple. I don't want to offend God, and I'm afraid that I am offending him. Or scrupulosity can take the form of, I really have come to believe that somehow God's mercy isn't enough for me, that his goodness isn't really there for me. And no matter what I do, I'm always somehow sinning against him. I'm always somehow doing something that I shouldn't do. Sometimes scrupulosity is it's an anxiety issue, like to be really anxious about this. Or sometimes scrupulosity is actually like a symptom of OCD. It's like it's in the compulsive disorder. So whatever the form of that scrupulosity that it might be, I think the important thing is, like, if you bring that also with you to say, like, I sometimes experience a lot of scrupulosity. Great. That actually helps the priest understand better what you might be going through and contextualizes it, because sometimes people who are suffering from scrupulosity will confess things that, like, this doesn't make any sense. Or the thing that they're confessing is, like, that can't possibly be sinful. They're like accusing themselves of these things that you're like, that's not real. And or there's no way that you did all of those things in the 24 hours since your last confession.
Right.
But it's this fear that I've improperly confessed it before, or this feeling. So like to encourage somebody to really understand what's happening, that there's this train of thought that's kind of being either presented
Mm-hmm.
to them or that they psychologically are experiencing, so that
Mm-hmm.
they can understand, like, this isn't God looking for ways to smite you for not being exactly what he needs you to be.
Right.
But rather, like, you are suffering something. This is a cross that
Mm-hmm.
you're carrying, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry that you're suffering that. I'm sorry that you're carrying that, and let's try to support you in that. Let's try to help you in that.
Yeah. I mean, so like in my own personal experience of scrupulosity, it was very much based in rumination. Just
Mm-hmm.
like couldn't stop thinking about that particular thing. And so um I think that it's always helpful to, that's why I say it would, because you just, you know, articulated that idea of like that couldn't possibly be sinful. And it's just that you're caught on a particular idea. Um but so like what is a helpful avenue? I would suggest that anyone who suffers from scrupulosity should, and I will explicitly suggest Catholic psych, right? Because like receiving medical attention, you know, like psychological help can be of such a great asset, you know, in overcoming this medical condition, right? Because that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting there's no spiritual aspect to scrupulosity, because I do think that that's also true. But it is a biological issue, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot of great resources out there for people who are struggling with scrupulosity that can help them both to receive the psychological support that they need and to receive the spiritual support that they need, so they can like get some pointers and some tips for how to
Right.
deal with this. So like one thing is, they'll actually suggest to people with scrupulosity to limit the frequency of their confession to once a
Right.
month,
Right.
and encourage them, like, this might take a little while, but like encourage them to receive communion, as long as they're going to confession once a month, understanding that unless they know for certain that they've committed a
Right.
mortal sin, they don't need to accuse themselves of a mortal sin. And
Right.
it's just like a helpful practice, not to take away or dumb down the faith, or to encourage people to do things that are wrong, but rather to
No.
like help them live within their context in a way that allows them
Right.
to still be healthy.
Totally. Totally. I mean, funny enough, like the story I think of when it comes to scrupulosity is Martin Luther. You know, like, and this is, I don't mean this in an apologetic way, because sometimes people throw out that, and I guess with some credence, that Martin Luther suffered from such terrible scrupulosity that is why he was so insistent upon sola fide, because he didn't think that he could possibly, you know, live within a Christian framework of saved by grace through faith and works, you know. And the famous story is that, I mean, I don't know who the author is, but my understanding is it's a primary source, that Martin Luther would come out of the confessional and then immediately get back in line. Like that was the level of his scrupulosity, you know? And the thing is, like, oh my gosh, I pity that man for that. What an awful torture, you know, that is so terrible. And obviously I don't, you know, I pity the man, but I'm not sympathetic to many of his positions, you know,
Right.
but like,
You're able to
and there's a
pity the
difference
man
there.
without saying that his theological conclusions were okay.
Yes, exactly. But the point being, like, that if that's the position that you're in, you know what I mean? Recognizing that well, you know, maybe there's something more going on here, you know. Maybe it's not that. I mean like we're all terrible sinners, you know. But also like
Speak for yourself,
you
Matthew.
know, yeah. You know, but like there's another reason. Perhaps there's another reason why you have such difficulty accepting God's mercy, you know? So I suppose I was just trying to explicate a very specific example,
Yeah.
of where that's occurred.
Maybe that could be a thing, though, that we get into right there from that point, that confession at the end of the day as a sacrament is all about receiving God's mercy. and experiencing his forgiving love, and doing it in the way that Jesus himself gave to the apostles and encourages us to do. Right? Jesus himself gives to the apostles that power to forgive sins, to wipe away sin. We're encouraged in the New Testament to confess your sins to one another, to like articulate what has happened, to bring that all before God, and bringing everything to God, bringing our sins, bringing our struggles and our failures before God. We're able to ask the Lord for the grace to continue on, to move forward. And because we're able to ask God for that grace to move forward, to take the next step, God can do these things for us. It's all about experiencing that gift of his mercy, though. It's all about opening ourselves up in our hearts to receive that gift. And then comes maybe the hard part, is that I have to say the things that I did. I have to give a name to my sin, which is not always an easy thing. But it's in giving a name to my sin. It's in articulating what I've done wrong that I'm actually able to receive something greater, something more. I'm able to come to a deeper understanding of my own need for God's forgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, intertwined with the receiving of mercy and God's forgiveness, but applied specifically to the scrupulous person, there is hope, right? Like there is real hope for healing from that affliction, and also hope for you as an individual who have committed sins, but God is actually that merciful.
Yeah.
Like your sin is not bigger than God's mercy. Thanks for watching today's video. Let us know what you thought down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.